10 million years ago, the Earth belonged to a creature unlike anything alive today, the Banmanas. They were neither fully human nor fully beast, but something in between. They walked upright on powerful legs, their broad shoulders draped in thick, coarse fur. Their eyes glowed with the fire of intelligence and the hunger of predators. The world they inhabited was raw and untamed. Endless jungles of colossal trees, rivers that cut through the land like silver veins, and mountains lost in swirling mists. In this age, there were no cities, no roads, no human voices. Only the eternal chorus of nature, and among it, the deep, resonating cries of the Banmanas. The day began in the shadows of a massive cave. Shapes moved in the darkness, low growls echoing against the stone walls. One by one, the Banmanas emerged, stepping into the pale dawn light. The youngest clung to their mothers, their curious eyes scanning the towering ferns and ancient vines that surrounded the entrance. The older males gripped wooden spears tipped with chipped stone, their knuckles scarred from countless hunts. Females carried woven baskets made of reeds, ready to gather fruits and roots. The air was thick with mist, and every breath tasted of damp earth. In the clearing beyond, smoke curled from a fire built from fallen branches. Around it, a group of Banmanas roasted strips of meat over glowing embers, their faces flickering in the orange light. The scent of cooked flesh drifted into the forest, drawing the attention of unseen predators. The Banmanas ate quickly, tearing at the food with strong teeth, their eyes constantly scanning the shadows. The jungle was alive with danger. As a hunting party moved silently through the undergrowth, they spotted a wild boar digging for roots. Without a word, they spread out. One climbed swiftly into the low branches, spear poised. Another circled through the brush to cut off escape. In an instant, they lunged. The boar squealed, crashing to the ferns, but it was no match for the coordinated strike. Blood spattered the leaves as the hunters lifted their kill, their victory announced by deep, guttural roars. But not all hunts ended in triumph. Sometimes, the Banmanas became the hunted. A low rumble in the distance warned of a saber-toothed predator stalking them. The air turned heavy with tension. A mother pulled her young close as the males formed a defensive circle. Spears raised. Through the trees, massive amber eyes appeared. And then the beast itself, muscle and fury wrapped in fur and teeth. It lunged and chaos erupted. Spears flew, claws tore, and the ground shook with the struggle. The predator retreated at last, wounded, leaving the Banmanas panting, their bodies smeared with blood and mud. Life was a constant test of strength and wit. At the river, some stood waist-deep in the cold current, stabbing sharpened sticks into the water to spear fish. Others scaled towering trees to reach nests, stealing eggs while birds screamed overhead. At night, they gathered around great fires, shadows dancing across their fur as they beat hollow logs and howled to the moon. They painted the cave walls with crude symbols, hunts, battles, the faces of the animals they feared and revered. Storms brought new trials. Rain hammered the jungle, turning paths to rivers of mud. Lightning split the sky, casting the forest in stark white light. The Banmanas huddled together under thick leaves, their fires struggling to survive the downpour. In colder months, they warmed themselves by sitting close to the flames, steam rising from their wet fur. They were not without their customs. In moments of peace, they adorned themselves with necklaces of bones and feathers. They exchanged food between families, shared water during drought, and taught the young to throw spears and climb trees. But rivalries ran deep. Disputes over food or territory often erupted into fierce fights. Fists pounding, teeth bared, fur flying. Wounds were worn like badges of honor. The jungle was not their only enemy. The land itself could turn against them. Landslides buried trails. Quicksand claimed the careless. Volcanic ash once rained from the sky, coating the forest in gray silence. Yet the Banmanas endured, adapting to every threat. Their survival etched into the land like the marks of their stone tools. They lived this way for countless generations, hunting, fighting, loving, dying. And then, slowly, the world began to change. The forest thinned, rivers shifted, new predators appeared. Food grew scarce. Some Banmanas wandered farther, seeking safer lands, but many never returned. Their numbers dwindled. The great caves grew silent. The paintings on the walls faded. Bones lay buried beneath roots and stones, hidden from the eyes of time. One day, the last of them stood at the edge of the jungle, looking out over a land that was no longer theirs. The wind carried no answering call. The fire in their eyes dimmed. They stepped into the trees and were gone. The earth kept their memory in silence. Millions of years later, only fragments remained. A skull buried in clay, a stone spearhead beneath the roots of an ancient tree, a faint handprint on a cave wall. And we, the distant children of time, can only imagine their voices, their struggles, their triumphs, and wonder how close they came to becoming us. 10 million years ago, the Banmanas roamed the earth as lords of the wild. But no kingdom lasts forever. Their fall was not sudden, like the shattering of stone, but slow, like the fading of fire embers under a cold wind. It began with changes so small they were almost invisible. A shift in the air, a whisper in the forest, the migration of prey animals to distant lands. But these changes marked the beginning of the end. The first blow to their survival came from the earth itself. The climate, which had fed their jungles for countless generations, began to shift. The seasons grew unpredictable. Rains that once came like clockwork began to fail. Rivers shrank, their currents slowing to a trickle. The thick green forest that sheltered them began to thin, and with each tree that felt a drought or storm, the Banmanas lost both food and protection. Fruit-bearing plants withered. Small animals, once abundant, became scarce. The Banmanas, who had always lived in abundance, found themselves searching farther, traveling longer, burning more strength with each passing moon. Then came the predators. In earlier ages, the Banmanas had stood as equals with the beasts of the jungle, sometimes hunter, sometimes hunted. But now new predators emerged, larger and more cunning than before. Saber-toothed cats prowled the edges of their territory. Packs of massive wild dogs began hunting in coordinated strikes, a skill that once belonged to Banmanas alone. Many felt the claws and fangs of these rivals, their bodies left torn in the mud, their cries fading into the night. But the deadliest enemy came not from the outside, but from within. Hunger sharpened tempers. The bonds that held their tribes together began to crack. Disputes over food turned into fights that left warriors bleeding in the dirt. Smaller groups broke away, believing they could survive better alone. But the wilderness was merciless to the solitary. Those who wandered alone often never returned. The great gatherings around the fires grew smaller, the songs and howls weaker. And then the sickness came. It began with a few, coughing, weakening, their eyes clouding over. Soon, the sickness spread through the tribe. The strong fell alongside the weak. Mothers carried their fevered children into the night, hoping for healing in the waters of the river, but found only stillness. The disease moved faster than their bodies could fight it. Entire family lines vanished in a single season. The air of the caves grew heavy with the scent of death. Some survived the sickness, but by then, the damage was done. The Banmanas were no longer many. They were scattered and broken. Their numbers fell below the point where they could defend their hunting grounds or teach their young the skills of survival. The jungle, once their domain, closed in on them. Vines covered their trails. Roots broke through places where they once sat around their fires. One cold morning, a young Banmanas warrior stood at the edge of the forest and saw no movement in the camp behind him. No smoke from the fires. No voices. Only silence. He was one of the last. He turned his face to the mountains and walked away, but his footprints were the final marks of his kind. The world moved on without them. The forest changed again. Rain returned, but too late. The predators that once hunted them roamed freely over their abandoned caves. The bones of the Banmanas lay scattered where they had fallen, in riverbeds, under cliffs, deep in the soil. Over time, the earth claimed them. Leaves fell, seasons passed, and the remains sank deeper, buried under centuries of mud and stone. The wood of their spears rotted, but the stone tips remained, locked in the grip of the earth. In some places, caves preserved their memory. On damp stone walls, faint handprints endured, painted with natural pigments that clung stubbornly to the rock. Drawings of hunts, of battles, of great beasts they once faced still whisper their stories to the darkness. but no eyes remained to read them. Millions of years rolled past. The continents shifted. Mountains rose. Rivers carved new paths. And the jungles of the Banmanas were replaced by grasslands and deserts. Their bones turned to stone, becoming part of the earth itself. In some layers of rock, a skull lay hidden, its teeth still sharp after eons. In others, a single-finger bone waited, silent and unchanged, holding the echo of a gripping hand that once threw a spear. Then came a new age, the age of us, modern humans. They walked the earth unaware that another upright creature had once ruled the jungles before them. But the earth keeps secrets, and the earth is patient. One day, the bones of the Banmanas began to surface, brought to light by the cutting of rivers, the crumbling of cliffs, the digging of the curious. At first, these finds were mistaken for the remains of apes, but some were different. The skulls had strained for portions. The leg bones showed the structure of walkers, not climbers. They were the shadows of a species that had stood between ape and man, staring back at us across the ocean of time. Today, we can hold their stone tools in our hands. We can touch the marks they carved into bone and rock. We can look into the hollow eye sockets of their fossilized skulls and wonder what they saw, what they feared, and how they thought. Their voices are lost forever, but in the silence, we can almost hear the crackle of their fires, the pounding of their feet as they chase prey, the sharp cry of warning when a predator approached. The Banmanas are gone. The earth swallowed them, and time erased their trails. But in the bones and the stones they left behind, their story still breathes. It is a story of survival, of triumph, and of inevitable loss. A reminder that no kingdom, no matter how wild or strong, lasts forever. And perhaps, as we walk our own path under the same sun, it is also a warning. For just as the Banmanas vanished into the shadows of history, so too could we, leaving only echoes behind.